Dear friend, I turn to you right now because of your love of intrigue, your love of, oh, what's the your love of the fascination that we, I think, both share over the history that we're lied to and lied about. You know this. I know this. This is who we are. This is our thing. This is who we are. We know that we've been lied to. And every now and then we'll meet somebody, dear friends, who kind of find themselves in the way of maybe being sort of, I don't know what the word is, interested in something. Tulsi Gabbard just said she's going to be releasing hundreds and hundreds of pages and thousands of pages on the RFK assassination. But there's not going to be anything there. And then there's things about the Epstein. What about Epstein? But there's nothing there. The history of blackmail, the history of everything, this notion of where all of these phrases and terms come from. This is right up our alley. So let me thank you for joining us today. Let me say first and foremost that I wish everybody a happy Easter and Passover and holiday season. I hope you spend some time with your family. You are my family. You are my demented, strange family. Weekends have been a bit abrupt, so thank you for joining on. Thank you for coming forward. Thank you for joining us right now. Thank you for your continued support of the nation. You have no idea what it means. You have no idea how it fortifies us and keeps us going. Thank you for your subscriptions and your donations and your super chats and your love and your everything. It's something that I don't thank you enough. I never want you to ever think that I take you for granted because I do not. So today, dear friends, I've got stuff for you. You're going to absolutely love. Love, I tell you, love. But before we begin, it is critical, it is imperative that I remind you of this important word from our very, very critical sponsor. Let me ask you a question. What happens when the trucks stop? Think about this. Trucks, the trucks that bring your food, and then when one store closes because of a riot or ransomware hit or a hurricane or even manufactured weather. Oh, yeah, we've talked about that. What happens when all of a sudden, suddenly, the entire supply chain collapses like dominoes? What happens then? We've seen it happen, and it doesn't take much. And that's the thing you've got to think about. A trucker strike, a cyber attack, some EMP, some Carrington class disaster, a city shut down by violence. It only takes one spark for shelves to go empty fast. And when that happens, and when that moment hits, you either have what you need or you don't. And that's why I am telling you, I want you to go to preparewithlionel.com. Our trusted friends at My Patriot Supply, they're offering unbelievable deals right now. You've got to see deals on emergency food kits that could save your life and your sanity. Over 2,000 calories per day. For 3 months of food per person, shelf stable for 25 years, in any kind of combinations you want, and made to taste like actual meals, not cardboard, not some military MRE. These kits aren't just insurance, they're peace of mind. So go to preparewithlionel.com, secure your kit, secure your future. Preparewithlionel.com, preparewithlionel.com, because when the world breaks down, the prepared don't panic. My friends, I wanted to be very, very clear. I don't even know if I put this in. Dare I say, did I? I think I put this in our thumbnail. I hope I trust. I hope I did. But today's subject is about specifically Alexander Hamilton, Jeffrey Epstein, and Bobby Kennedy, the father, and how they're connected and why history to me is still fabulously incredible with information, with stuff that I think is just so great, so monumentally great. And one of the things which is also important and critical for you to know is the following. How does this all work together? Now, I know you and I appreciate this, and I know you love this probably more than anybody, because remember the great words of Tolstoy: history would be a wonderful thing if only it were true. So let's look at a couple of things here. Let's take this thing very carefully. First of all, the term blackmail. What does that mean? Because that's really what, if you think about it, that's what Epstein is all about. The term blackmail originated in the 16th century, Scotland, where mail became, it meant rent or tribute. And farmers in border regions were often forced to pay protection money to raiders to avoid being attacked. Now, the word black referred to something sinister or illegal, while mail came from the Old Norse mal, meaning agreement or tribute. So, blackmail literally meant illegal tribute. Over time, it evolved to describe threats used to extort money or silence, or someone by exposing damaging information. Now, this is critical. As you know, dear friends, Tulsi Gabbard is providing information and the like, in which she is giving information to help us get to the bottom of the Bobby Kennedy assassination. Pilgrim says, people are strange when you are stronger. Thank you so much, Jim Morrison, ladies and gentlemen. Pilgrim Media, thank you for that. Indeed, they are. Mr. Mojo Rising. Who is the following? Who is suspect number one in the killing of Bobby Kennedy? Which is what Tulsi Gabbard is so proud to work in concert with Bobby Kennedy. Thane Eugene Cesar. Who? Here is a breakdown of the case against Thane Eugene Cesar that I hope to reduce to a clear adumbration, if you will, that highlight key discrepancies, contradictions, suspicious elements regarding this fellow. Now, this is a guy whose name never came up. Thane Eugene Cesar was directly behind RFK. Let's get right to the facts, because forensics mean everything to me. Forensics and evidence, not what you think somebody, in any event. He was directly behind RFK at the moment of the shooting in the pantry of the Ambassador Hotel on June the 5th, 1968. He was behind him. RFK was shot from behind, not the front. The coroner at the time, Dr. Thomas Noguchi, concluded that the fatal shot entered behind Kennedy's right ear at point blank range, within 1 inch. And of course, there's stippling and powder and all of the residue from that. Sirhan Sirhan, or Sirhan Sirhan, which is technically the way to pronounce it, was in front of Bobby Kennedy, several feet away. This is according to multiple eyewitnesses. His gun never came close enough to account for the fatal shot. Stop. Sirhan's revolver held 8 rounds, but at least 13 rounds were heard or accounted for in the room, based on audio and witness accounts, raising serious questions about a second shooter. Thane Eugene Cesar originally denied owning a .22 caliber gun or pistol that the same caliber used in the assassination. This was an assassin's gun, because this is known, as you know, to bounce around. It was later confirmed that Mr. Cesar did own a .22 caliber Ivor Johnson cadet revolver, contradicting his initial statement. Cesar then claimed that he sold the gun before the assassination, but later admitted he sold it afterwards. Now, why you're selling the murder weapon, I have no idea. But this is, again, a serious timeline inconsistency. And the buyer of the gun could not definitively confirm the purchase or the date. Cesar claimed he was carrying a .38 caliber weapon that night. Remember, he was like a security guard, but there is no public record that this gun was ever examined or tested. The LAPD never tested Cesar's weapon, despite its proximity to Kennedy and the nature of the fatal shot. Kennedy fell backward after being shot, according to the autopsy. But Cesar said he fell forward. Another contradiction. Why? It raises doubts about his account. A number of witnesses saw Cesar draw his weapon, yet he was never treated as a serious suspect. nor was he forced to explain his exact movements or the weapon tested. And the media and official investigation either ignored, dismissed, or were told to not pay any attention to these discrepancies, focusing solely on Sirhan Sirhan as the lone gunman. Independent investigators, forensic experts, and Bobby Kennedy Jr. himself have publicly questioned the official story, identifying him as a likely second gunman. Thane Eugene Cesar had ties to anti-communist causes, raising possible political motives to oppose Kennedy's policies, including his plan and opposition to the Vietnam War. The official narrative requires ignoring forensic evidence, the number of bullets fired, the autopsy findings, key witnesses. This is what they've got. We don't need whatever box of stuff Tulsi Gabbard has. That's fine. This is where we need to go. The gun that Cesar owned matched the caliber used in the killing, and he was in the perfect position to fire the fatal shot. Yet he was never investigated. And the only plausible explanation for the lack of ballistics testing and follow-up is either gross incompetence, which of course can always be, or an intentional cover-up. When you look at the mass, the accumulation of all of the evidence and all of the testimony and all of this stuff, from the stories that change and shift to untested weapons to unaddressed eyewitness reports, it builds a circumstantial but very powerful case against him. Does his name come up? No. Why isn't? And Bobby Kennedy has mentioned this, and the Kennedy family, they don't want to say anything. Look, if I'm wrong, all I'm saying is this is where I would go. I would hire investigative outboard. I would deputize investigators to go find this out. And the mainstream press has largely buried this story. Again, fueling suspicion and conspiracy theories and the like. The full truth about Robert Kennedy's assassination has yet to be told. We keep pretending that we're getting to it, and we keep releasing files with PDF, and there's a picture of him, and you can go online and you can read police reports, and this one was standing here, and Rosie Greer was here, and Rayford Johnson was here, and they fell here, and there was the man who lent him his coat and the rosary and all this. What does it have to do with anything? They give you the illusion that you have information, the perception, the illusion, the belief, this idea that somehow you're being told something. I've seen it before with 9/11. I've seen it before with everything. Same thing with the John F. Kennedy assassination. They just throw stuff at you. They go, look, we did it. That's not it. Just push that aside. This is a systematic pattern of evasion and contradiction and deliberate and focused suppression of the evidence that demands a full reinvestigation. This is the thing which drives me crazy. Why do you suspect no one cares? Why do you suspect nobody ever even talks about this? Why doesn't anybody seem to even care? Now, I don't want to get into MK Ultra, because if you bring this up, MK Ultra was declassified, this mind control thing. If ever there was somebody who certainly looked like maybe he was really, really, really involved in this, it would have been Sirhan Sirhan. Candace Owens has talked about it and others, because he was the one who said, what's going on here? What happened? I don't remember this. Mark David Chapman. It's happened so. The CIA has told you specifically, this is what we were investigating, working on at that time. Imagine how perfected it is now. It was rather crude then. This is what kills me. This killed me. And what they have done is they have weaponized individuals. They have been telling you that people who are individuals, people who are not a part of this, how do I say this? People who are not a part of the intelligentsia, that they don't know anything. Have you been watching or following this interesting story about, what is his name? Daryl Cooper. Have you heard this? Have you heard this? Have you heard these stories? This is the new thing right now. And it's a Daryl Cooper and Ian Carroll and all these people who are not, listen to me carefully, who are not official historians. Have you been following this? If you're one of us, you know about this. If you're a part of our tribe, you know about this. If you're a part of the conspiratorium, you know about who these people are. I don't know whether Daryl Cooper is anything. I don't know who Douglas Murray is. Let anybody speak all they want. It's a free country. You're entitled to do that. But they're saying, oh no, 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 he's not an official historian. And what he is saying is contrary, especially regarding Middle East narratives and the like. I don't need experts to point out things that sometimes are so obvious. I don't need to have a homicide detective or an historian to point out that which makes the most sense. Let's talk about this great story about Alexander Hamilton and the ties of that. This notion of blackmail. Blackmail is so. Maria Reynolds and James Reynolds. Did you ever hear about the Hamilton scandal? This is great. And I've mentioned it before, but it's coming up again. Maria Reynolds approached Alexander Hamilton in 1791, claiming to be abandoned and needed help. So Hamilton, being the rake, the roue, began a secret sexual affair with her while he was serving as Secretary of the Treasury. Now, her husband, James Reynolds, orchestrated the scheme to extort Alexander Hamilton, and he demanded hush money, blackmail, extortion, hush money. So Hamilton paid bribes to, in essence, blackmail to James Reynolds to keep the affair secret. Well, it turns out that Reynolds was later arrested for financial fraud that was tied to various Treasury activities. When Hamilton refused to help him, Reynolds said, well, I'll take care of that. And he leaked word of the affair to political enemies. Okay? What happened next is Hamilton's opponents attempted to accuse him of corruption and misuse of federal funds and all this kind of stuff. So to clear his name of financial misconduct, he released, quote, this document called the Reynolds Pamphlet, or some people say pamphlet, in 1797. In this pamphlet, he admitted the affair in complete detail, but he denied stealing public money. And the pamphlet, remember these pamphleteers, the pamphlet was a political and personal bombshell. It essentially was, for the first time, a public confession to save his legacy, but it destroyed the worth and the momentum and the inertia, or the velocity, if you will, of the threat, which is kind of what David Letterman did. Remember when somebody was trying to blackmail him, he went on TV, called the police and said, well, here's what happened. The scandal was used by Hamilton's people in Jefferson's camp to discredit him. That was it. The affair destroyed Hamilton's presidential ambitions, severely damaged his reputation. And you see how this works? Some things never change. Now, speaking of Thomas Jefferson, this is also interesting. Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. As you know, Sally Hemings was an enslaved woman at Monticello, Jefferson's home, his estate, and it was believed to be half-sister to Jefferson's deceased wife. We don't know. I don't know. So Jefferson began a relationship with her when she was around 14 years old. Sound familiar? 14? Now, believe it or not, this is pre-Puritan. That was considered almost less. It was more and more common. But look at the similarities between all these people. Blackmail, Epstein, underage. See? Hemings he sired at least 6 children with Jefferson. 4 survived into adulthood. Now, Jefferson never publicly acknowledged the relationship during his lifetime. Remember Strom Thurmond? Remember that one? Same thing. So the affair was exposed in the press by James Callender, who was a former ally of President Jefferson. Callender had previously helped expose Hamilton and expected Jefferson to reward him. When Jefferson refused, Callender said, okay, we'll fix that. Kind of like the first TMZ. He retaliated by publishing Hemming's story. But his supporters, Jefferson's supporters, initially dismissed the allegations as slander. And DNA testing in the 90s confirmed that Jefferson's paternity of Hemming's descendants. So look at the common threads in the political irony. James Reynolds used his wife to trap Hamilton in a blackmail scheme. Maria Reynolds may have been a co-conspirator or a manipulated pawn. Jefferson's allies weaponized Hamilton's affair to accuse him of corruption. Jefferson himself was involved in a secret relationship with an enslaved minor. This reminds me of Tish James. It's like, why would you allegedly be involved in this kind of behavior regarding mortgage fraud when you're going after Trump? And journalist James Callender exposed both Hamilton and Jefferson during, or rather, turning on Jefferson later on. This is great. Both scandals were used for political gain, demonstrating that blackmail, sex, power have always been deeply connected. It's incredible. It is fascinating to me. And what's interesting also is, I would love to follow through with that. Have you ever heard the story of Grover Cleveland? Grover Cleveland. I'm not going to spend the rest of my time doing this, but here is the deal. This is what I want you to understand. If you really want to get to the bottom of something, Mr. President, the JFK hearing with Luna and whatever was the worst. They thought Oliver Stone was Roger Stone. They didn't know anything. They didn't care. They don't understand. History, in many respects, is a lie. And that's why Daryl Cooper and these other people are spot on. History is a lie. If you think the news is bad, imagine what our history is like. Think about this. And the very first thing you have to do as a good American is to believe nothing. Believe nothing that you hear from this. Believe nothing. Believe nothing. Believe absolutely nothing that you hear, nothing that is a part of this, nothing from anybody. And when it comes to the notion of assassinations and the like, ask yourself this very, very simple question. Why would these people want to clear this up? If you don't know who this thing is, you have official people, like, for example, was it Posner? Was it Posner? Who, I think he wrote Case Closed. His position was there was nothing regarding the Kennedy assassination other than Lee Harvey Oswald. RFK, Sirhan. This story didn't make any sense. When you're a homicide detective or you're just a regular detective, the first thing you've got to do is you got to ask yourself, does any of this stuff even make sense? It's one of those things which is so fascinating. And the evidence is there. Pilgrim says the whole 1619 Project narrative is illegitimate. I would certainly think so. Don't tell that to the New York Times, my friend. So you don't have to believe me. I'm not telling you anything. I'm pointing to the evidence. Look at the evidence supporting, not me. I'm not just saying this. I'm not saying, well, this is what happened. No, I'm saying this is it. Take what I said, review it, prove me wrong. I don't just come up with hunches like, well, I think so. A lot of people just have these ideas. They just say things. The other day we did an exercise. Why do people shoot? Why are there shootings? And many of you fine folks, you said, oh, family, and no, that's not it. That's just philosophy or wishful, I don't know what the term is. But this is a different story. This is something, ladies and gentlemen, that I want to tell you is real. Do you know how many lies and secrets your government has? And what they do is they take you and me and they call us a conspiracy theory because we've been lied to from everything from remember the Maine to the 1898 and the Havana Harbor to the Gulf of Tonkin, to just go down the list. Just go down the list. But they have weaponized the idea of conspiracy theories, and they've weaponized the fact that all you have to do is just ask very, very simple questions. You see, they think we're stupid, and they keep throwing, but there's too many of us. Like my good friend Vinny one time told me, we can drown them in our urine, meaning there is so much of us. And look what happens. Look at this debate with Douglas Murray. They're now trying to cover up Douglas Murray. Douglas Murray is the blue origin of, propagandists. He doesn't understand. Nobody likes him. He doesn't understand. Nobody likes him. Nobody. He comes across as a pompous asshole. But yet they send him up because they have British accent and all that thing. What was the event? What was the event? What was the thing, first and foremost, where you thought to yourself, and I don't want to say red pill because I think that term is used too much, but when did you say, oh my God, this? Do you see what Kirk Weldon's doing with Tucker Carlson? God bless him. Do you understand this? What do you think? John Billy's got a lot to say. John Billy says, Douglas Murray is not a historian. Well, how do you know? What is an historian? What does that mean? Do you need a license to be a historian? What is a historian? Don't you think I am? I just read you history. These are facts. Please check my facts. I'm not making these up. I'm giving you dates and this is what this word means. It's readily available. Am I a historian? What is a historian? What does that mean? The Isle Payne said, JFK cover-up did it for me. Not only the cover-up, the fact that it was a lie. John Billy, feeling funny today, says, okay, we are all historians today. No, you're not following this. By the way, would you really like to, and I appreciate your spunk. I really do. But I want you to focus less on being cute as sticking to what we're saying here. I know you're into that kind of rebarbative thing, and I'll bet you in your circles, they say, boy, that John Billy, he's something, isn't he? Well, not here, because we're professionals. We are all trolls. We've got our black belts in trollage. Think of what I'm saying here. Think of what I'm saying. Think of how this is done. They sent Murray out because they didn't like what Cooper was saying. And they didn't like his narratives regarding Hitler and the Middle East and Stalin, and they didn't like that. So they went out and they said, you're a joke. Dave Smith is a joke because he's a comedian. Joe Rogan is a joke. Everybody's a joke. They bring that Sam Harris out, and you send these people to go out and say, kill the narrative, kill the messenger. We don't like what you're saying. Good luck. One time I got into quite the row when I said, and I firmly believe, that there's no indication, none whatsoever, that Hitler was a psychopath. None. Absolutely positive, because that word has been used to mean things like, mean or not mean, evil, that kind of thing. They just say these things. There are people who also use the term satanic, and they'll just say these things, and in certain circumstances and circles that seems to work. But I'm telling you right now, listen to what I'm saying very, very carefully. There are people out there who say, oh, no, we don't like you. Go out and try to, I don't want to say humanize, but if you say the wrong thing about Hitler, Stalin, Mao, maybe not so much Mao, but certainly we saw this during the 50s. Do you know what a communist was in the 50s? No. You know what a communist party was? Do you know what a communist believed? An American communist? No. No, you don't. You don't. You don't know. You were told, how do I say this? we think sort of that we know. We always think of some Ruski red. Pilgrim Media says, I collect books of Civil War material or military battlefield dispatches. I find it entertaining to read, true or not. I find it interesting. Oh, I find that I listen. Listen specifically to what they said to Shelby Foote. What Shelby Foote said, what his positions have been, his ideas, and his are all of these verifiable? Well, maybe not, but still kind of interesting. Kind of interesting. But see, here is the thing. What do you need to know to understand the truth? Do you have to be a historian? Marcus says. But before Lionel speaks, he should always think, but what would Douglas Murray say? If you can't tell the phony baloney, Daryl Cooper is now more famous and Dave Smith because of Douglas Murray. So whoever hired Douglas Murray to go out and kill the messenger did exactly the opposite. Did exactly the opposite. The worst thing you can do to somebody today is not to tell them that they're wrong, but to tell them that they're inconsequential. Well, that's nice. That's nice. People will, and there's also something that happens, and I've seen it especially in Middle East and Israel and Palestine talk. When you've been doing this for so long, let me see if I can explain this to you. You will go on and you will deal with people. Norman Finkelstein would run into, Piers Morgan. And they start to get at each other. Irrespective of the particular idea or the thought being advanced, it was the fact that they were starting to get on each other's nerves big time. And when they were getting on each other's nerves big time, they realized that this really has less to do with what's going on than the fact that I can't stand you. I have friends. Have you heard today this thing? What's it? These marches, 501 or something. These what is it? This Trump march. Trump marches. 50. What's this called? Have you seen this? They're called the 5501. 5501 protests. 50 states. Let me see. 50 states. 50 protests, 50 states, one movement. Okay, and they're out there doing this. And do you think they know what they're doing? No. Do you think they understand the particular specifics of the Trump administration? No. Do you think they have any? No. They're doing this because they hate him and they hate Trump fans or Trump people. It's nothing to do with the reality of it. They hate the people who represent them. Do you hear what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's very, very critical that you understand this. Because that's kind of where we are. You don't need... Roger Ailes one time, they asked him, do you think that journalists should be licensed? He says, you only need a license to cut hair. So what I'm telling you, my dear, 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 great, great, and wonderful friends, is simply this. This is something where I want you to know they have hitmen to go out and to limit what you're saying. They did this years ago when you have one of the most vilified people of all time was Dr. Robert Atkins. I knew him well. I went to him. This is really the paleo diet, keto diet, so to speak. And I lost a load of weight, and I don't think it's good for you. But at the time, he had this idea that low carb and eat all the meat and steak you want and all this stuff. Okay, but either way, but they sent everybody after him because he was heretical. He was a heretic. You can't say that today. The same thing applies here in our country, in our world. The same thing applies. Do you hear what I'm telling you? The same thing applies now. And there are certain, they don't like you saying that the official narrative of Bobby Kennedy is different than what they've told you. We already told you Sirhan Sirhan or Sirhan Sirhan. And that's it. We told you about 9/11. We told you about UFOs. We already told you that. We told you about JFK, about MLK. It was James Earl Ray. That's it. Now shut up and go away. But we're not going away. We're not going away. You understand? Good. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear friend, Pilgrim Media, thank you today. Our lone gunman, so to speak, our lone benefactor, our lone contributor, our lone friend. Thank you so much, Pilgrim. I appreciate that. I want everybody to have a great and a glorious day. May see you tomorrow. It depends. My weekends are kind of interesting. Happy, happy Easter. Happy, happy Passover. Happy holidays to you and yours. May you have a wonderful day. Thank you as usual, dear friend. Thank you for everything you do. And until then, remember, the monkey's dead. The show's over. Sue you. Dat.